With that, we can finally get into it. My name is Jeff Hunter. I am the field CTO here at NinjaOne. If you've seen a webinar in the past, you have probably seen or heard me. Definitely check out our YouTube channel. I see some people talking about they don't always receive the emails for the videos. Check out our YouTube channel. Our webinars are posted there. And again, all the resources that you need will be in the YouTube description. Today, we are celebrating the 8.0 release of NinjaOne. This is a really nice release that I feel like everything across the entire platform gets kind of a nice, shiny new thing to talk about. And so we're going to go ahead and review some of the new features that we have, some of the early access features, and then if we have time, we will have a little sneak peek of some new functionality that is coming to Ninja very, very soon. So our agenda for today, we are covering some of my personal favorite features in the 8.0 release. We're going to start by talking about the new patching automations. This gives you way more flexibility with scheduling when patching is going to occur versus what you had previously. Previously, before 8.0, all scheduling of patches was tied to the policy. And so whatever your schedule was in the policy, that's when the patch cycles ran. And with the new patching automations, you can essentially run them like you would any other script. And that just gives you a ton more flexibility with when you want to patch and then what ends up triggering a patch scan or a patch apply cycle. And those are for both operating system patches as well as software patching if you're using NinjaOne software patching. So that's across the board there with the new flexibility to either scan for new patches or apply patches that have been in an approved state. We'll also talk about a new feature in NinjaOne that essentially takes the CVEs that we recognize are present on a device due to a missing patch and then just gives you more visibility on what the exact nature of those vulnerabilities are. So that's a nice little quality of life enhancement. We've also added in API endpoints so that if you want to import the results from a third-party scanner, something like Tenable, something like Qualys, something like Rapid7, really anything that can give you the identifying CVEs and an IP address. You can now automate the import of that into NinjaOne so that you're always staying up to date and you don't have to do the manual vulnerability import that we previously had to do. We are also bringing in device tags. And so what that allows you to do is tag a device, and then you can use that for a variety of purposes. This essentially gives you the ability to create a static group of devices more easily than you could before. And so with that, you can create groups that target reports. And so that allows you to make your reports more narrowly focused to only certain types of tagged devices. And it also gives you the ability to do more with automation. So, i.e., if a device has a certain tag, then I want to take some series of actions on it, or I want to have an alert fire based off of the presence of a tag when combined with other conditions that you might have. We also have NinjaOne Remote Background Mode. This is a huge one. I love this one. I've heard since I started working at NinjaOne almost 5 years ago, I have heard about the desire to have kind of a silent session. I don't want to disrupt the end user. I want to be able to get into the device, do my work without disrupting them in any way. That is exactly what background mode lets you do. It lets a technician connect to a system session on the Windows device, and you're able to work completely independently of the end user. So the end user is working on their device. They have no notion, no idea that anybody is remoted into their device, and they're not being disrupted in any way by a technician having to say, hey, I just need to get in there, do this for 10 minutes. I have been there myself. I've had to say, hey, I got to get in here and do something. I know you're working on something important, but I got to do this thing. And background mode gives you the alternative to just eliminate that friction so that you just don't have to go and have this back and forth with the end user. I think ultimately it'll save a lot of time. We'll also cover some of the MDM enhancements that we have for Android and iOS. There are some really, really cool things in there that expand what you can do for both Android and for iOS in the 8.0 release. And then we'll get into some of the fun early access features. Early access means that anybody can get access to it, but you do have to request access from your account manager. So the top 5 bullets that we see here, everybody gets those. You'll see those in your environment across the board. But if you want an early access feature, just email your account manager and say you're interested in either agent tokenization, which is a big enhancement to how you can deploy the NinjaOne agent, and then also NinjaOne PSA, which is something I think our managed service provider partners will primarily find useful. And this allows you to easily bill for devices that you have managed within NinjaOne. It allows you to bill for the time that you spend on tickets if you're using NinjaOne ticketing. You can, of course, also bill for whatever you want, any sort of custom product or attribute. But the two automated ones are going to be counting your different devices and then, of course, tabulating up the time that you spend on tickets. This does require QuickBooks Online. That is not going to be a permanent state of play. We do absolutely plan to offer more options. But right now, if you do want to use NinjaOne PSA, you have to be using QuickBooks Online. There is just no way around that. But again, we do plan to offer more options so that you don't have to be tied to QuickBooks Online solely. And then if we've got time, I've got a little bit of a sneak peek to show you something that's coming to NinjaOne real soon. With that, let's go ahead and get into the product and actually see how everything looks and feels. So let's go ahead and go into this environment first. And what we're going to be looking at first is the new patching automations that we have in NinjaOne. So for starters, you will see these as native automations. So if you come to the automation library, you can look for a native automation right here. And this is 71 automations that you have out of the box, a lot of common ones like rebooting devices. But if we search for patch, you'll see right here, we've got 6 different types of patch apply that you can do for operating scans. And so this would scan on Windows, scan on Mac, scan on Linux. That identifies what new patches are available. And then you have the apply of patches on Windows, Mac OS, and on Linux. You have the exact same stuff down here for software. So software patch, that is only going to be on Windows and Mac OS because the way that patching works on Linux, there's not necessarily a dedicated software only patching option. So that's why you see no option for Linux there. It's because Linux patches just fall under Linux patching rather than being segmented into operating system versus software patching. Now, what's really exciting with this is how can we use these automatically? If we come into policies here, everyone very familiar with the concept that we have with our Windows patching. When do we want to run a scan? When do we want to run an apply cycle? We can see here our various scheduling options. Every time the system boots, daily, weekly, monthly, some sort of custom schedule. A lot of people use the Patch Tuesday as kind of a fulcrum, to branch off of. And of course, you have an option here where you don't run it on a schedule at all. So you can go ahead and set your schedule here to actually be none. And so that's actually what I'm going to do here is set my actual schedule for scan and updates to none and show you sort of an alternative way to have all of these run within NinjaOne and still stay up to date on patching. So for starters, let's go into our conditions. One of our conditions that we have, if we scroll down to patching, is when you have a device that hasn't had a patch installed in 30 days or more. And so right here, you can do this for third-party software as well as operating system patching. You can determine how many days count as being delinquent, essentially. And then you can also make sure that this is only looking at updates from the Ninja engine. This is something I would recommend. A lot of the time, Defender self-updates, and that can kind of pollute the results of whether an actual operating system patch has been installed or not. So I do prefer to use this option here with the Ninja Update Engine only box checked, just to, again, eliminate potential, missing the fact that patching isn't happening on the device if only Defender patches are installed. That's kind of an edge case I like to account for there. So right here, we have now a two-step process. When we recognize that the device has gone more than 30 days without running a patch, we are then going to run a patch apply cycle across that device. And so now I can ensure in an automated way that no device is ever going to go more than a certain number of days without having a patch apply cycle ran. And so that's a nice way to automate that. I could also do this slightly differently. Maybe whenever there's a high CVSS score detected. In this case, if something has a 9.0 CVSS score or greater, and the duration has been 2 days or more, we're going to go ahead and raise an alert. And this goes ahead and lets everybody know, hey, there's a very important critical patch. It's available. It hasn't been installed yet. You might want to take a look at this. But of course, what we really want to do here is automate it. So when we say that there's a patch available, let's go ahead and kick off that patch apply cycle. And so this gives us just another way to automate when important patches are detected or when devices are being delinquent in their patching and to go ahead and automate it, with a minimal amount of fuss. So this is a really handy option here, but you also have some other options too. Let's go ahead and close out of our webinar policy here, and let's go over to our devices menu. And so in our devices menu, we have the option to create dynamic groups of devices. And so in this particular case, I might want to go ahead and look for any device that hasn't had an OS patch scan in a certain number of days. Let's go ahead and make this easy. Let's say if it's been 7 days with no OS patch scan, then I want to know about it. Unfortunately, the hygiene in this environment is too good. I have had patch scans recently, which is why you don't see anything. So we'll just have to use our imaginations. But we'll go ahead and say this is devices without a patch scan in 7 third time's a charm. Got it right. And so now I can target this to a task, or have a task target this group to be more accurate. I can come in here and create a task, go over to my new task, and this might be to run patching on devices. I can go ahead and use my automations here. So I'll go ahead and say for my OS patch scan, I want to do Windows. I also want to do Mac OS, and I also want to do Linux. And that's because in my device group, I didn't specify that it only had to be Windows devices. It didn't have, or it only had to be Mac OS devices, or it only had to be Linux devices. And so in this case, it's going to look for any device that hasn't had an OS patch scan in that amount of time. And that means I can also run all three of the native automations across all those devices. Of course, if it's not a Linux device, it's not going to run the Linux script. If it's not a Mac device, it won't run the Mac script. It'll only run what's appropriate for that operating system. So that's a very nice option there, to kind of have one single automation that runs across all your devices, rather than having to have a Linux specific one, a Mac specific one, a Windows specific task. Rather have it all consolidated in one single workflow here. And I can then have this run on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis. I happen to like the every option here. So let's say every 4 hours, if there are any devices that haven't had a scan in 7 days or more, it's going to go ahead and run on those devices. Now, of course, the logic here means that once that device has a scan, it automatically drops out of the group. So the idea here is that your patches, patch scan cycles, they're not running every 4 hours. It's only running on devices that haven't had one in 7 days. So if we ran one right now, that scan would take the device out of that group. And so 4 hours later, when I go to run that scan, only devices that are still in arrears are going to have it run. It's not just going to run consistently every 4 hours on every single device, only the ones that haven't patched in a certain period of time. And so here I can go ahead and target an organization or a device, but those are both static selections. I want to make this dynamic so I don't have to come in here and do upkeep every single week. And so what we will do here is type in devices without a patch scan in 7 days. I can select that. And now Ninja is doing the heavy lifting of determining what devices need to run this automation based off of the parameters or the filters that we used in that device group from earlier. So again, really, really handy ability there to use these new patching automations in a myriad of ways that makes them more targeted, makes them more dynamic, and really helps you prevent devices from falling through the cracks. A couple other quick items here on the devices menu is what if we wanted to go ahead and run patching whenever there was a approved patch? And so let's go ahead and find OS patches. Let's find out where we have an approved patch right there. Again, apologize that this environment has too good hygiene and that everything is actually installed. But what we would see here is any device with an operating system patch in an approved state. That means that it is awaiting installation. And if you want to keep that on a scheduled basis, you can, but you could also go ahead and save this as a group, devices with approved patch. I can go ahead and save that, and then go ahead and create that task that runs a patch apply cycle across all the devices that have at least one or more approved patches awaiting installation. And so if you wanted to do something where patches just get deployed far more quickly than you're currently able to do within policies, you have that flexibility here using the tasks, rather than having the initiating schedule be inside of policies. And I'll mention here that even though I went ahead and did a Even though I've created this group here, you do have the ability to run this in conjunction with your existing policy scheduling. So you don't have to set them to none like I did. You can have patching scheduling turned on in policies and then just have additional executions of patching outside of policies. So you don't have to set it to none. You can have patch scheduling in policies and still use these native automations. You're not restricted in that way. Let's go ahead and talk about another type of patching automation that isn't a native automation. It is a template library script. So this was not a part of the official 8.0 release, but it came out in the same time frame. It came out earlier in March, so I have no problem talking about it. You can see over here on the right-hand side, we can organize our table header here to find when these were last updated. And a few of these I think are quite useful. One is deploying the latest Windows 11 feature update. So if you want to force a Windows 11 device to 24H2, this would be a great option for that. And then also want to update Windows 10 to Windows 11. We are starting to approach endgame here a little bit with when Windows 10 is going to go end of life for many people. I know there's some licensing complexity there where it might be staying on Windows 10 longer for more money. But regardless, I think most people have to sort of evaluate when devices can be upgraded to Windows 11 and to start automating that process. So one thing that I would point out here is that we do have this Windows 11 compatibility script. And so what this does is write into a custom field whether the device is capable of upgrading to Windows 11 or not. So let's go ahead and take all of these things and then try to tie them together inside of a policy. We'll go back into our webinar policy, and now we're going to go ahead and look at compound conditions. And so this is just a different mechanism I can use to go ahead and initiate my Windows 11 upgrades. And so right here, I have three different conditions that need to be valid for me to take an action or create an alert, as it were. And so right here, what are my three options? First and foremost, what version of Windows am I on? Am I on Windows 10 or am I not on Windows 10? Am I on Windows 11? So this right here ensures that the device has to be running Windows 10 in order to take this particular action. And this is just a very basic evaluation script that I'm running here. The second bit of criteria here is that I have to run that Windows 11 compatibility script. And in that custom field that I'm monitoring, it has to say passed. I will say I had to slightly modify the template library script to give me a good bit of text to uh, uh, trigger off of right here. And so in this case, I added in this little passed tag here so that I can easily identify when the device actually is capable of the upgrade. And so right here, we have now two conditions. We have to have a Windows 10 device, and then it has to be capable or has passed a check saying that it can perform the Windows 11 upgrade. Uh, and then right here, finally, we have something that's a little interesting. You don't really need to do this, but essentially it is a time script because the compound conditions can utilize script result condition. Essentially what I'm doing here is just looking to see if I'm within a valid window between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. The date doesn't really matter because I've set the window to be a recurring window. And so this means that as long as the device is online between these periods of time, that's going to be when we go ahead and trigger this automation to occur. And of course, what is the automation we're triggering? It is, well, allowing the Windows 10 to 11 upgrade, and then it's the actual Windows 11 upgrade that I forgot to put in here, like so. Couple of questions here. I see Michael saying, does running patch apply automatically do the scan first? Yes, I do believe there's a scan as well as a part of the patch apply. Um, sorry, Michael, my bad. I'll try to go a little bit more slowly. Some question from Josh. Can the patch OS install script install all patching, or can it be filtered down? It is everything that is approved. So yes, it is going to install everything that is approved. It is not going to be something that you can piecemeal select one particular patch to deploy. And on that note, since we're talking about patching, I do want to talk about one thing, your reboot options here. Because of your reboot options, having the potential to automatically reboot a machine, if you are leveraging this auto reboot option, just be aware that when you run these patching automations outside of policies, this is still going to apply. So if you do have something set to automatically reboot, you want to probably change that if there's the potential for automations to run during the day and potentially disrupt workers. So yeah, certainly before you start leveraging the patching automations more broadly, definitely a good idea to look at your reboot options inside of policies to make sure that you don't have auto reboot or something that's going to be too invasive and end up causing you more problems. Definitely don't want that. All right, let's go ahead and move on to something different. We'll talk a little bit about patching. So let's go ahead and go back to our dashboard. Now, what we're viewing here is patching in the context of vulnerability. Now, this is something we've had for a little bit here. When you come in to look at patches, and I should pick a better example here. When you come in to look at patches, you see CVEs that are addressed by the patching question. And so if we look here at the pending patches for this device, here are all the CVEs that get fixed by this particular patch. We have a new feature, which if you go into administration and then apps and then into NinjaOne patching right here, you will see a vulnerability health tab. And what this allows you to do is essentially have the vulnerabilities that we know are missing from the device as the result of missing patches impact the device health. So rather than being just a pending patch that's available, you might also want to show the critical, high, medium, and low vulnerabilities that are present. So a good example is this device that I was just on. This device, I have not imported vulnerabilities from any third-party scanner. What this has done is it has initiated a patching cycle. It has recognized that this VM is missing these patches, and we know that there are CVEs addressed by all of these patches, and therefore we can show all the medium, high, and critical vulnerabilities that are present due to the fact that this device has missing patches. So this is largely a UI update, but I do find this really useful, quite honestly, to kind of see where the vulnerabilities are. It just brings it to be something that's more top of mind in my mind and in technicians' minds. So I think having this visibility is a good thing. Another good option here, if we go back to the devices menu, is I could use the filters here for vulnerabilities. Right there, CVE ID. Or no, what was it? Right here, severity. So if I want to find where I have critical, high, medium level vulnerabilities that have been detected, I can also use this device search group to then go ahead and run patching again. So you can see how this would be, very useful for automation purposes, for visibility purposes, for reporting purposes. So some good options there, but it is an opt-in feature. So you will need to go into the Apps Exchange. You will need to go to the patching tile and then enable the vulnerability health setting that we just saw earlier. Another really good option that we have with vulnerability in the 8.0 release is the ability to import from a third party. What you can do is go into the API here, there, and go down to at the very bottom where it says documentation version 2.0 new, and then click on the view option there. You will see that we do have vulnerability management API endpoints in here now. And so what you're able to do is take a CSV from your third-party service and upload it to NinjaOne. And then that's going to give you increased visibility on whatever vulnerabilities have been detected by that third-party scanner. So that's really handy. This is designed to be agnostic. We're not favoring any particular vendor here in terms of an export. All we need are a few bits of identifying information. Most people tend to be using the private IP address, and that's so that we can link to the device in Ninja based off of that IP address. I think you can also use MAC address as well. And then we also need, of course, the CVEs themselves. So a column that has all the CVEs in the proper format with CVE dash year and then the number at the end of it. So those are the pieces of information we need. If you can get your system to get you that export, then you are able to go ahead and automate the import of the vulnerabilities into NinjaOne. I personally am using an API server, an automated documentation server, which I've talked about in the past, to make an API call and retrieve the CVE data and then go ahead and upload it to NinjaOne without having it be too onerous. And we are going to have a script posted that is going to uh, display how you can go ahead and upload the vulnerabilities from a CSV into NinjaOne. So we will have a resource on that very soon, just so you have an example of where to get started on how to actually import these. Uh, Got a question here from Chris. Should we expect false positives in the case of Windows when you patch for March, but it says you still have vulnerabilities for the February patch? No, I would not expect that. I would assume that if you're fully patched, you should not see any vulnerabilities detected on your device if you're enabling that vulnerability health feature. Uh-oh, I'm seeing a lot of error messages. I'm sorry, everyone. We will definitely take a look at this. Yes, I see a question about, is this video being recorded? Yes, this is being recorded. You will receive an email with a link to the recording on YouTube and a lot of the resources that I've mentioned today and will mention here in a bit. Those will be in the YouTube description so that you can follow along at your leisure. Yeah, sorry about all the errors. We will figure out what is going on with that. Moving on. I know I'm running out of time already. Let's go ahead and talk about tags. So let's go back into my environment here. Go to the devices menu. And I'm going to add in a column to my devices menu that shows me my tags on all my devices. I'll move that up to be a little easier. And so you can see right here that we have a dedicated tags column. This is for our device tags. Uh, what this allows you to do is maybe we select a whole bunch of devices here, and I can go ahead and edit the tags, my device search group. I could create a brand new tag right here. Maybe these are going to be executive workstations, so I'll give them an executive tag, and then I can go ahead and update that. And you can see right there, I have all my tags really readily apparent and visible for me. Now, this is something I can then use and filter on. And so right here, I can go ahead and say, well, I want to see all my executive devices. Now, what is really useful about this, and what we've been asked a lot about over the years, is static groups. I want to create a group of devices based on a static attribute rather than it being dynamic. And I can certainly see use cases for that. Um, so what we can do here is go ahead and create that static group by assigning a particular tag. This is way better than the previous workflow. I would have had to tell you to create a custom field of some type and populate it with like a comma separated string. Don't want you to have to do that anymore. So now the experience is way easier of just assigning tags to devices and then being able to go ahead and filter on them right here from the device search grid. You can then go ahead and save this. And so I'll say this is my executive devices right there. And then I'm going to go into my reporting. And so I'll go into my reporting section here and I'll create a new template, a new summary report on patch compliance. This will be an organization-based report. I'll go ahead and say I want to do patch compliance, create that. And then what I can do here is I can filter this. Oops, I can filter this based off of the groups that I've created. So now maybe I want to only report on workstations that have the executive tag present. And so this allows me to have a much more granular type of report to where instead of reporting on all devices within an organization or in a location, you're using the device search grid and the dynamic groups to create something that allows you to be way more targeted in how you treat these reports and what information you send out. So another potential use for this is in going to a policy and using a policy condition. So we saw earlier our Windows 11 upgrades, and we saw that we were looking at the Windows version. We saw we were looking at the compatibility based off of a custom field, and we were using the time as well. Let's add in a fourth one. Let's go ahead and check for the presence of a tag. And so right here, I'm going to use a script to check a NinjaOne tag. This is something that'll be posted on my GitHub as well. One of the resources I mentioned that will be in the YouTube description for our recording. And so what I can do here is go ahead and add in one or multiple tags separated by a comma. And then I have the option here to say I want all tags to match or only any tags to match. And so in this particular case, all I care about is that the tag upgradable is present, only one. So I actually don't even need to make a selection for mode here. I can leave that blank. And so I'll go ahead and hit the apply option here. I want to alert on an exit code of 1. I want to go ahead and disregard any text string output here. So I'll use does not contain. I do want to include the final script output in my alert, and my error notification indicating that something has gone wrong in the script is 2. And so right here, this is now allowing me to be even more granular with how I'm targeting this automation. I am targeting my upgrade of Windows 11 solely to devices that have met all 4 of these criteria. They also have to have the tag present in addition to all the other variables that we spoke about earlier. Yeah, I see questions from people asking why they can't just check for tags directly within a condition. Absolutely a plan. We just did not make it into this release. So yes, you absolutely will have tags as a dedicated condition. The workaround for now is using a script because we did make the tags available in the through NinjaOne automations. And I will specify that it does have to be a NinjaOne automation that you're using to interact with your tags because you can't do it from the remote CLI. You can't do it locally on the device. For security reasons, you have to set, read, interact with tags within a NinjaOne automation. If you want to do it through the CLI, you also have an option here to do this through the API. But yes, long term, this is absolutely going to be a native condition that you can trigger off of. In the interim, for this particular release, you will have to use a script if you do want to leverage them inside of conditions. Um, we may get that script into the template library, but it will definitely be on my GitHub. So definitely look at the resources. If we do a template library one, it will probably be done by one of our engineers at Ninja who will do a much better job of it. But yeah, I think you've got this as an option in the GitHub, and then long term, we do want to make this a better native experience to just make it more usable. No, the GitHub is not paywall. That is open to everybody, Nate. And yeah, I see a lot of questions about dark mode. We are working on our native dark mode. You can actually see in this particular environment here that we are reworking a lot of our dashboards. And so part of this rework also encompasses both greater customization of the dashboard with things like widgets and also dark mode. So yes, we are working on it. In the meantime, there are a variety of Chrome extensions that do a pretty good job of keeping your eyes safe. I don't think I can read that on the air, Ryan, but thank you. Let's go ahead and move down to the next example that we have here, which is background mode. So this is a really, really good one. If you go to the apps exchange right here, I believe this is an opt-in feature as well. So you have to go into um, the app tile here, and you have to go down to background mode and you have to enable it. I already have it enabled, but anybody who's fresh to the 8.0 release, you do have to opt into this. It is not an automatically on feature, but you don't need to talk to an account manager. You can self-serve this right within your own portal. Now, what this allows you to do is go ahead and connect in background mode. This is a system session on a Windows device, and that means that the end user themselves, they are not aware that you're remoting in. They have no idea that you're remoted in. They can't see what you're doing. It also means that you can't see what they're doing. So this is designed for maintenance tasks, troubleshooting in the background. If you want to see what the end user sees and help them troubleshoot, you want to use the standard connection of NinjaOne, which will make it very apparent that somebody is remoted into the device. There will be branding and all that so that somebody knows someone is there. However, plenty of reasons you might need to be dialed in, and you don't need to talk to the end user at all for anything. And so we can use background mode for this. You can see that I am being prompted for MFA to make sure that I am who I say I am. I believe right now this is going to prompt you every single time. We do have plans to change that so that it does respect the MFA idle time, I believe. So something to be aware of there. You will be prompted every time right now, but I do think we plan to change that so that it does respect the settings that you have for elsewhere in the console. So right here, you can see this is background mode. I am remoted in. There is no desktop. You can see the view here is a little bit different. We go down here to the bottom. You can see that we have a couple different items here. I will tell you up front, Microsoft Edge is present here, but it is not going to work. That is because Microsoft Edge requires a user session, and because we're in a system session, it is not going to function. So no matter how many times you click it, of course, watch it work now. That would be a miracle. But no matter how many times you click it, it just ends up here with nothing. However, One nice thing is that Firefox does work. So if you do need to browse the web here, you do have the option to come in here. I would use this all the time for things like connecting to switches and trying to manage things in the background without having to bother somebody. So yeah, definitely very useful here. Like using the event viewer. We don't have a full event viewer on the NinjaOne dashboard, so being able to silently come in here and look for things, I can certainly see that there would be a ton of value for that. And of course, you have PowerShell. So if you wanted to use PowerShell, you could. Obviously, in Ninja, we've got the remote CLI here for CMD and PowerShell. We've got the remote tools for Task Manager, File Browser, Service Manager. So there's plenty of stuff you can do in the very background, without even initiating a remote access session. But certainly can see a lot of value here in needing a remote in, needing to take care of something real quick, and not wanting to have to do the delicate dance of, hey, is it okay if I steal your computer for 10 minutes? You're not doing anything like critical or important. I've had situations where that goes on for weeks. So this just eliminates that friction. It takes something that I think we've all struggled with. Anybody who's worked on the help desk has struggled with this at some point. Is that friction between technician and end user? And so this allows you to very neatly sidestep that little bit of friction there. At least a little bit. There's always going to be some, but I think this eliminates a lot of that friction. Yeah, Chrome also has a weird bug here. It does open, but there's some sort of user-specific privacy setting that essentially means that Chrome looks like this, which is not particularly useful. Um, we do think that we have a plan for this, though. So the hope is that Chrome ultimately is going to be something that functions in background mode, but that is tentative at best. So more to follow on this. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next one. Take a look at some questions real quick, make sure that I am not missing anything too critical. Rishi asks, any plan for an Entra ID integration? So you can integrate with Entra today for SCIM purposes. You can see right here, my identity provider. We use Okta here. And so Okta, all my users were provisioned via SCIM here. So there is an Entra ID integration on that front. If there's more Rishi that you would like us to integrate with, then we do have some plans. Definitely let us know. Um, Andy asks, is there a condition possible to alert when a device comes back online? Not directly, but you could monitor something that indicates the device is online as kind of a triggering factor. This could be an event ID for boot up. This could be just a service that's always being running. So not directly, but I think that there's some good workarounds there, Andy. Joel asks about a facelift to the dashboard, which you can see right here. This is something I think you can opt into. So if you are curious and you want to see this view, go ahead and reach out to your account manager. They should be able to turn it on. One thing I would say is this is kind of a one-way train. So if you are not ready to make this switch, please don't make that request because I don't think it is particularly easy to remove. I don't actually know if we can do it or are doing it. So just be aware that if you like this, great, but you are going to be stuck with it if you do transition to it. Ultimately, this is something that everybody will receive and be in every NinjaOne environment. I think Randall says he doesn't get the emails about the videos. This will be posted on YouTube, so this will absolutely be something present on YouTube for you. All right, Mark asks a very pertinent question here. Do end users have access to Ninja Remote Background Mode? Absolutely not. So yeah, end users cannot use Ninja Remote Background Mode. They are stuck in a standard session. That is a technician only feature. Garrett asks, how do you verify what version you are on? On the main dashboard, hold down the control key and then move your mouse over the Ninja logo in the top left, and you will see all the various versions you are on. Everybody should be on some variation of 8.0 today. Matt asks a question. SSO and SCIM is great for end users. Sorry, for technicians. What if you need to associate 10,000 end users to already provisioned devices? You can create end users through the IDP, and they would be end users within NinjaOne. And then you can use the API to assign them to devices. So that is absolutely something that you can do. I would recommend using the IDP to sync the end users in the NinjaOne just for ease of use. And then you can use the API to go ahead and assign the users to the devices. I think I've got a script on the NinjaOne Discord that actually tries to identify the email address of the user so that you can use that as a correlation for who the user actually is and what device they should belong to. All right, I am running out of time. Let's go ahead. We'll go into the lightning mode real quick. Let's talk about some of the MDM new functionality that we have. I'm going to cover actually a little broadly here, both MDM functionality for Android and iOS over the past two releases, because there's actually been some incremental improvements here in between releases that I wanted to make sure got covered. So let's go to MDM here. Let's look at Android first. First and foremost, there's now support for always on VPN settings. I believe this is in application management. Yeah, right here. So you can go ahead and force a VPN to be always on your Android device. We also offer factory reset protection, and you can enter email accounts that can utilize this right here. We have permitted accessibility services control now. There is delegated scope options for your applications, which I don't think I have set up in this environment, but it does exist there. You can add in your applications and you can delegate the scope there if you have a need for that. We also have the ability to do lock screen customization. So you can add in custom messaging here for your lock screens. We now support input method management as well. There's a new experience for how users get assigned and for user list device enrollment. We also offer hidden SSID support as well here. So if I go to add in a Wi-Fi network and it's hidden, we can go ahead and add that in. So a lot of great stuff here. The big highlight feature for Android in 8.0 is remote control. So this is something that's automatically on, nothing that you need to do. There is going to be a prompt to the end user through NinjaOne Assist, the app that facilitates NinjaOne Remote on Android, and they will need to approve that control permission. But now, when you remote into an Android device, you will be able to actually control the screen in addition to viewing it. I will say that that is not the case on iOS or iPadOS. Apple's decision is not to allow control. There is no way around that for us. So iOS, iPadOS, that will remain view only for the foreseeable future. But we do now have remote control on Android devices. So that is really going to be a really handy feature for sure. You now also, we have the sort of rebuilt experience here. Let me actually go to a different environment real quick. We look at our applications, you do have a different experience here for the managed configurations. And one really nice thing about this is that it does allow you to use variables. So I'll talk about that more on the iOS side, but you now actually have a series of variables, which you can see right here that you can reference inside of the managed configurations of Android. So pretty much anywhere within policies, but definitely the managed application configurations on the Android side. And then if we come back here and go into our iOS policies, we can switch over to the Apple side and talk about some of the updates here. I would say first and foremost, you have application configurations here as well. So I can go ahead. Let me go back into. So if we come in here, you can see that we have our applications and you now have the option here to do configurations. And so this is something that we just added here in the 8.0 release. This gives you kind of parity across Android and Apple, iOS, and iPadOS whenever you're deploying applications and you need to customize the configurations. The variables that I mentioned right here, they also work on Apple. This is actually an Apple article here. And so you can go ahead and use those right here in your configurations. This is kind of a standard dictionary with a key value pairing in here. And so this allows you to configure the settings of third-party applications. It's all contingent on what the application allows you to do. So you definitely want to research the documentation for the application that you want to control because they would determine what is actually going to work here in these managed configurations. Other option is custom payloads. So right here, if you wanted to, for example, add in a web clip here, you can see that you have the option to add in a custom payload into our iOS or iPadOS policy. Again, I would say this is kind of like custom scripting for MDM. The difference being obviously that you can only do what is supported by the operating system or by the application if you're using these in the managed app configurations. But this is something that really adds a ton of flexibility to the iOS and iPadOS side of NinjaOne MDM. Gives you a lot of flexibility and capability here, especially when combined with the variables. We do plan to extend these variables, by the way, to custom fields. That's just not in this release. So hopefully in the next release or two, you will see custom fields being an option that you can point to for variables, which is only going to make it easier to manage all of this stuff at scale. Let's talk about a few other new features. One is an early access feature, and this is going to be the agent tokenization feature. If you go to devices here, and I'll back up here, early access means that anybody can utilize this. So if you would like to take advantage of the agent tokenization feature, just go ahead and reach out to your account manager and they can turn that on for you. Agent tokenization means we are now using a generic agent. And this is really beneficial for deployment purposes because you have one single link that you can always point to, and it's always going to have the most up-to-date, valid version of the Ninja agent. Let's go ahead and go in here and click on my token here. And so you can see my option here for my tokens. I can go ahead and create one. I have an installer URL right here. I have an easy command that I can use. I can download the actual installer itself. So just really, really useful. And then in the top right here, we have the actual generic agent. And so again, this is something that's going to be persistent. It's always going to be this link. And then you pass a token as a parameter during the installation, and that determines the organization and location that the device is ultimately going to belong to. So this is a huge, huge improvement over our previous process here. It gives you tokenization, which means that your installations can be revoked whenever you feel like it to keep them more secure. For example, I'll probably revoke some of the tokens that I showed on here so nobody tries to put devices into our environment. It also does a couple other things under the hood. It does use on Mac OS a silicon compatible agent. So when you do take advantage of this, you are going to be using something that doesn't require Rosetta on Mac Silicon. It is going to actually run natively on the device. And then on Windows devices, it also standardizes the installation path. It will no longer be sort of a random directory in program files that is based off of the organization and location name. It will be something standard. I think it's just NinjaOne. And so that is also a big improvement as well. I'll note here that that is not retroactive, the program files aspect on Windows. So you are still stuck in the current directory that you have, but any new deployments, they will be in a standardized NinjaOne program files directory. The other early access feature that I want to talk about, this is a NinjaOne PSA, and this is something I think is primarily useful for our managed service provider partners. There are a few caveats here. We do intend to further develop this, but as it is in early access, there are a few features that are not quite ready for prime time. Number one is you have to be using QuickBooks Online. There's just no point, no value in this if you are not using QuickBooks Online at this particular point in time. You also need to ensure you are billing in these four currencies. So US dollars, Great British pounds, euros, Canadian dollars. If you are not billing in those currencies, it's not something that we are currently going to be able to support right now. But once you do that, it gives you the option to take your attributes within NinjaOne and automatically bill for them. So if we come in here, we have our products. These would be the individual line items on your invoice. What do you want to bill for? There are two criteria that you can automatically bill for. One is your managed devices. And so right here, I can go ahead and create a managed workstation product. This is going to charge an amount every single month. And then right here, what constitutes a workstation? And so what I've done here is I'm saying any device role can count as a workstation as long as it's in this group. And so we use the groups that I created earlier to determine what constitutes a workstation. Maybe it is a laptop, a desktop across Windows and Mac, and then maybe also a tag needs to be present in order to determine that it actually is something that can be billable. So really anything you can create a group for, that is something that you can then create as a billable product that will automatically sync over every month into QuickBooks and help automate all of your billing. So another example of this would be Sentinel-1. So right here, Sentinel-1, I can go ahead and say, if you have Sentinel-1 installed, then I want to go ahead and charge for the deployment of Sentinel-1. So this is really handy. You build all these various products here. If you are using NinjaOne ticketing, and I would say that PSA is primarily useful with NinjaOne ticketing, I think that's kind of the idea is that combination is going to be what is beneficial for you. You're not able to bill for technician time if they are not in NinjaOne ticketing. We can go ahead and create different levels of billing here, level 1 support, level 2 support, and this is going to allow us to tabulate all the time that we're using in NinjaOne ticketing and convey that over into QuickBooks so that we can bill for it appropriately. Um, After we create all these products, we create agreement templates. We go ahead and assign these agreements at the organization level so that for each client, each customer that you have, we're able to go ahead and have a specific settings for them in terms of when do they get billed, how much do they get billed, are they quarterly, are they monthly, and then that'll all sync over to QuickBooks Online. This is a huge feature. There's really a lot to talk about with PSA. Um, so we are going to have another webinar on NinjaOne PSA in about a month. That'll be towards the end of April, and we'll speak on this in much greater detail and really go through it. But this is, I think, about 5 minutes. This is as much time as I can dedicate to this and still have it make some sense without getting too much into the nitty gritty. Last thing to talk about is our sneak peek. So our sneak peek is, as some of you might have guessed, macOS MDM. So we've been showing MDM for Android and for iOS. I did want to talk a little bit about the macOS MDM. That is in closed beta with the 8.0 release. You can make the request to your account manager if you want to try it out. But if I'm being honest, that is coming sooner rather than later. macOS MDM is coming in the 8.1 release, and you are not misreading that. That starts to roll out next week. And so you can see here, hopefully by April 10th, or more specifically, April 11th, everybody is going to have macOS MDM. Let's take a look at what that actually looks like. The MDM settings are actually under your existing agent policies. So they will not be under MDM policies. They're going to be in the same policy that you already manage your macOS devices on. We can see here our teriyaki donut one. We go down, we have our MDM settings that we can configure. This is the passcode settings. This is restrictions on device functionality. Should they be allowed to use handoff or not? What applications do we want to deploy? I will say that this is not through the App Store. This is through your apps and books tokens. So you have to have your Apple Business Manager content token integrated into NinjaOne, and then you'll start to see what you can deploy. But this is not through the App Store right now. You can configure the network settings here, and hurrah, you can control all of your patches. So what I might do here is go ahead and say, well, I want to retain control over when patching is happening. I want to delay up to 90 days. And this means that I'll actually see the updates on the dashboard at the device level. And I'll also be able to see them in the same pending, approved, rejected bins where I manage all my other patches for Windows, for Linux, and for iOS as well, since we control iOS patches too. So really, really handy. And I'll say it is much easier to transition into MDM than it for macOS than it is for iOS and for Android. There's none of the sort of full factory reset required that you find on the iOS and iPadOS front. You can deploy your policy preferences here, your system extensions, and this is going to be super helpful for doing things like allow listing for your EDR. And so for CrowdStrike, I think there's like 4 separate policy preferences and system extensions. You'll be able to go ahead and add those in here so that when you go to deploy your CrowdStrike setup or your Sentinel-1 setup, that it's going to already have all those preferences already allow listed. And that's just going to, again, further decrease the friction that comes with having to deploy all this stuff and the nature of having to do some things manually within the Apple ecosystem. With that, I think that is my sneak peek there. I did want to go ahead and try to get to a few other questions here, but we do have a winner for our giveaway today. Let's go ahead and get our drum emojis going in the chat. Our winner for today is Joe Reese. Joe Reese is our winner. Joe, someone will be reaching out from NinjaOne next week to let you know about your prize. I have 90 seconds left. Let's see what questions we currently have that I am able to get to. Dark mode is coming, but I can't say for how soon. Sorry, Aaron, I can't be more specific on that one. Skylar says, is there an automation condition for device idle? There is not, but you could script that out if you wanted to. Have we fixed the it will implement reboot if scan runs and a reboot is already scheduled for something unrelated for patches? That's going to be dependent on your reboot settings, I believe, if I'm understanding this correct, Dan. So yeah, I think that's dependent on your reboot settings. If you have automatically reboot in the reboot options, then it's probably going to automatically reboot the way that I'm understanding that. If I'm misunderstanding it, please reach out. When do we expect the CrowdStrike vulnerability importer via API to be released? That is something that you can set up today, but we don't have a direct integration. I would have to check on when we might expect a direct integration. You would need to today have an entity that retrieves the vulnerabilities from CrowdStrike and then uploads to NinjaOne. We're not going to be able to do that peer-to-peer. There's going to need to be a third-party server or serverless environment that coordinates all that. Beth asks, any word on recurring maintenance mode? In our 9.0 release, hopefully we have native automations similar to the patching automations that allow you to initiate maintenance mode more easily. So we are continuing to work on having something that ties directly into patching so that as the device patches, it automatically goes into maintenance mode. So we've got a couple irons in the fire on that, but I think the soonest one we'll see is in 9.0, Beth. Josh asks, is PSA an additional cost? Probably. They don't let me talk numbers, anything with a dollar sign in front of it. So unfortunately, I do not know. Matt asks, can you point automations at tags? Absolutely. You would use the groups functionality that we saw earlier to go ahead and search for where tags are present, save that group, and then use a task to target that group or groups, as it were. Matt asks, what are the primary security concerns with remote background mode? Is there a guide to best practices for setting this up securely? I feel like we've tried to bring that into the product already so that you don't necessarily have to worry about that. There's already a segmentation there to where the technician is not able to spy on the end user. The end user can't see back. There's already MFA to protect the session. So yeah, I feel like we've tried to build this with the idea that it can be used only in a secure manner and it can't really be used insecurely. We've got plenty of activities and logs that dictate when somebody is using that functionality. With that, I'm a little bit over. I apologize. If you have any questions, tags do support emojis, Nate. If you have any questions on anything at all, please feel free to reach out. jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Have a very good rest of your day, and I hope all of you are enjoying the new 8.0 release. Take care.